When you take this out,
Okay, no problem.
avoid interference.
Oh, it's fine. It's casual. So, Obie, thank you for coming. So as you know, we have invited, this is our first round of asking some GSU students who are immigrants and refugees to the U.S., right? Who have come and had kind of a long path of migration to the U.S. and who have an object that they have had with them in their transit to come and tell us their story. And you were kind enough to be one of our participants. So thank you for being here.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so basically what I just want to start off with is like you telling us your name, your family name, where you're from, your hometown, your home country, and how long you've been in the U.S.
Okay. My name is Obie Njoku.
Mm-hmm.
Obie is actually the abbreviation of a longer name.
Oh, really?
And the full name is Obie.
Yes.
Yeah, and it means consolation.
Consolation.
Yes, there's a story to that.
Oh, yeah?
Yes. And
what's the story? Is it a short story?
Yeah, I can condense it. I was born. There was a very brutal civil war in Nigeria between 1967 and 1970. My mom had a male child who didn't survive. I don't know how long he lived, but he died shortly after he was born because of the difficulties associated with the war. And then after some years later, sometime after the war, I was born, and I was also a boy. So my mom thought that God gave me to replace the one that was lost. So I was a consolation child.
Yeah, you were the consolation child.
Yes.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah. Wow,
Yeah.
That's beautiful, Obie. Okay. So you were born in Nigeria.
Yes.
Tell me about where you were born.
So I was born in a village called Mbaleze. It's in a town called Isu in southeast Nigeria. And the state is in a state called Ebonyi too. So Mbaleze is the village, the town is Isu, and the state is Ebonyi. That's southeast Nigeria.
Okay, good. What was it like there? What was your village like?
It has changed a whole lot. But when I was growing up, it was I happened to live very close to the main road, the major road that goes through the village that connects many states. At the time, I was a kid in the early 70s. It was dusty. It was a dusty road. Now it's built up and it's concrete and asphalt and all that. But I remember when it was a dusty road and cars would go by every once in a while, and we were very mischievous as children. And my one memory that I have, I think one of the strongest, was trying to throw stones or rocks at vehicles going by.
Really?
Yeah.
What kind of vehicles were going by?
All kinds of vehicles,
Okay.
small vehicles, Jeep, Land Rover cars.
Okay. Any like military vehicles, or were they
No.
just people?
Just
community
normal
members?
civilian
Okay,
vehicles.
Civilian. Okay.
Yeah, and then most of them actually, the one we had the most fun with were we call them tippers. I don't know what you would call them here, like the open body trucks that they used to haul dirt from construction sites.
Yeah,
So,
like a transport truck kind of.
Yes.
Yeah.
So people will use them to bring sand, the brittle sand that they use in making concrete.
Really?
So yeah, it's very, very common because we don't have the setup where you go to a place like Home Depot and order 1,000 or 10,000 concrete blocks.
Yeah.
Like cinder blocks for buildings.
Right.
So if you wanted to build a house, depending on the quality of the house and how strong you want it to be, you would specify to a contractor that you would hire on the quality of cinder blocks that you want, and you would haul in the sand and the cement.
Wow.
And then make the blocks on site according to your specifications. So you always had those lorries. We call them lorries. So they would come by very, very frequently with sand for concrete blocks.
And you would throw stones.
We would hide in the bush and throw stones at them. Children are stupid.
Yeah.
So
It was a game. It was a child's game.
yeah, it was a
Yeah.
child's game.
Okay.
Yeah. Well,
So-
it was actually a game to see who would hit it, because the thing is, you throw the rock. Sometimes by the time your rock gets to the vehicle, it has already passed. So it was always a game: who would be the first to hit it, and how many vehicles did you hit in a day with your rock?
Who got the best hit?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, I understand. That's fun. So your village, was it rural or was it built up?
No, it was.
What was it like?
Very rural.
Yeah?
Then, yeah. And
Like, what were the houses like?
other houses were, the majority of them were mud houses, built with grass roofs. So we call them thatch.
Yep.
And so the majority of them then were that way. But now it's completely different.
Yeah, it's built up.
Yeah, it's built up now.
So no more mud houses?
I mean, you find mud houses every now and then, but they are very few and far between. And there were some people who also had houses built with mud blocks, not cinder blocks with concrete, but blocks made out of mud, and it would look like concrete. And after it is done, it's much cheaper, of course. And after it was built, you will use concrete to plaster over it.
Yeah.
So on the outside, you would think that the house is built with concrete all over, but actually it's
But
mud
really, it's
on
mud.
the inside. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have some of that, but the majority are concrete, cinder block built houses.
Okay. How big is your village? Was your village when you were growing up?
I would say the size of Norcross, the entire city of Norcross, or perhaps. I think it's actually larger.
Your village was?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, we call it village, but
that's big.
Yeah, it's very big.
Yeah. So you didn't know everybody in your village.
Definitely not. No.
Oh. Wow. Okay. In my head, I think village, and I think like 20 families.
No. It's thousands of families.
Yeah. Okay.
But I think the term village is more a reference to how developed it is as against to the size of the community. So you have towns that are much, much smaller than my village, but you call them towns because they are developed. They have electricity and good roads and plumbing system and all that. But if it's rural, so village is more a reference to rural areas than,
and not the size, but the development. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fascinating. So then, how long did it take you, all said and done, to get from your village in Nigeria to Atlanta?
Okay, that's an interesting story. So the village where I was born, so in Nigeria we have a culture of homeland. Like I said, the name of my village is Mbanese. That is where my grandfather and great-grandfather, till time out of memory, come from. And that is where my children and fifth generation are going to come from, because they have a homeland, and we keep passing the homeland as an inheritance to the next generation. So when I say that I'm from this village, I've only visited this village. I didn't go to school there, I didn't grow up there, but that is my village, that's where I come from. I actually grew up in the major city in southeast Nigeria called Enugu, which is a very large city with airports and anything else you could imagine, high-rise buildings. Yeah, well developed. Yeah, so I grew up in Enugu, and after Enugu, after high school, I also moved to Jos, which is a university town, University of Jos, which is in northern Nigeria. And I lived in Jos for about 10 years until 2001, when there was a crisis because of religion and politics. And I left Jos and came back to the East and started preparing to go to Europe. So
you knew that you needed to leave.
Yeah, I needed to leave. I just needed to leave. I lost everything I had in the crisis. I narrowly escaped, actually, because I was living in a predominantly Muslim part of the town, and I was a Christian.
Yes.
So I was a target. I was a very easy target, and we had no idea that was coming. So I was in my house when the whole crisis started, and They rounded me up, but I was just very lucky that um, the leader of the gang was the chief security officer of the neighborhood before this incident happened. And I just happened to be friendly with him. I would give him a little present here and there. And because I was a single young man, many times I came home late, and he would have blocked the gate, the entrance, and I would stop my car, and he would come to me, ask me for something, and I'll give him something, and he would let me in. So we were friends.
So you knew him, or he kind of knew you.
Yeah. So he actually protected me physically from harm.
Really?
Yes.
With his body?
No. I mean, he was the leader of the gang, and he's feared.
Okay. Yes.
He's respected.
Okay,
so he told nobody to touch me. Exactly, and he told me to run, go this way.
Wow.
Yeah.
So if you didn't know him, it would have been different.
Maybe I wouldn't be here today. It's possible. Yes.
Okay. So in a way, he gave you passage to
he
escape.
gave me to escape.
Okay.
Exactly.
And so then you went back
and
to the east.
I went back to the east, exactly.
And you had to leave Nigeria.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. I actually wanted to go back, but my family said, no way you're going back there after you have just narrowly survived.
Why did you want to go back?
Because I love the city. Jos is a very beautiful city, very temperate weather. Jos has the highest concentration of foreigners like Europeans and Americans who lived in Nigeria, yes, because the weather is like springtime weather. It's not as hot and humid as the rest of the country. Yeah. And north of that is very cold, but desert-like, very dusty. So Jos is like the happy medium. So that's where you will find most non-Nigerian Europeans who lived. So it was a very lovely city, and it's a smaller town than Enugu where I grew up.
Yeah. Okay. So then you went back east, and then what?
And then I started making arrangements to leave Nigeria, and then so if you follow the news, you will see stories of African migrants trying to cross by land through Libya or Morocco to Gibraltar and all that stuff. If you had money, which I lost, I didn't have money, so actually my best friend paid my way through to get to Europe. And so if you had money, someone like that, they would help you with people who would arrange documents to help you get a pass. So that was the route that I took. But those who didn't have money, they would like to make it on foot or as much as they could afford through the deserts, going through different countries. But I was fortunate that I had the resources to arrange the documents and buy a flight ticket to fly.
Yeah. So that was so your best friend.
Correct.
Did your best friend arrange for your Portuguese document?
Yes. So we had his family had a telephone company.
Yep. Oh.
Yeah, and I worked for them too. When I left Jos, I ended up at his place, and there were so many things to do. So I just became an office manager in a matter of weeks. And my role in the office manager was to control certain about 5 or 6 telephone booths within that office space. It was a large office space with several telephone booths, and then people came there to make international calls, and it was before cell phones were ubiquitous. I think we didn't have cell phones then,
right.
And not everyone had telephone lines that had that would give you access to international calls. So if you wanted to make an international call, you would come to a place like ours and pay, because we had a direct line. It's called IDD, International Direct Line, Direct Dial. Sorry. So
you worked that.
I worked that. So there were countless number of people came to my office to make calls from overseas to overseas. And many of them were people who were visiting from Europe or America or Canada or Asia, and they wanted to make a call. So I had access to a lot of people who traveled a lot, both for private and business purposes.
Okay. So you arranged for ways to get.
Yeah, so through one of my customers at the office
Okay.
who came back from Portugal, he told me that he had connections through which we could get a pass that would allow me into Europe.
Right.
And we discussed it. He asked us to pay a certain amount of money and he would give us the connections. And we did. So he took my passport photograph, and when he went back to Portugal, he arranged the document. By the time he came back, he had a document in hand.
Wow.
Yeah. So.
Can I ask how much it was?
I think it was about $2,000.
US dollars?
Yeah, $2,000. It's not cheap at all.
No.
No, it was $2,000 just to get a document, not my flight ticket.
Right, just
that document. Yeah, it was about $2,000.
Wow.
And now after you get that document, Nigerians we know our ways. So so if you showed up at the airport with that document, they will not allow you to board. So you would have to pay the airline a security officer to allow you to board with that document. So I couldn't even afford to board in Nigeria. I had to go to a neighboring country, Benin Republic. That's where I took off from.
Really?
Yeah, because they also knew Nigerians and what we do, but the amount they charged me to board from Benin was much, much less than what I would have had to pay to travel from Nigeria. Mm-hmm. So I actually took off from Benin through with Air France, which was why I ended up in Paris.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so that's a good segue to tell us about your object that you brought, right? Which is
yeah. So the object that I brought is a shirt. Mm-hmm. It's a handmade shirt. The material it's made of is called tie and dye.
Tie and dye.
Tie and dye because it's dyed manually.
Yeah.
As you could see those stripes on it.
Mm-hmm.
So it was made for me by my aunt. Her name is Antonia. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Excuse me.
That's all right.
And then when I was traveling, after I had that document from Portugal, I was very confident.
Yeah.
I didn't need to be escorted or had someone guiding me. I thought that I was old enough and well informed enough to defend this document.
How old were you?
I was 29.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I was a full-grown adult. So I got to France.
Yep.
And I went through passed through customs, and I was going through immigration. Mm-hmm. And the immigration officer was suspicious because, of course, I had never left Nigeria. So this is a brand new, we call it a virgin passport.
Yeah.
But I had a document saying that I lived in Portugal. There's a mismatch there. And he asked me, where are you going? I said, I'm going to Lisbon. And he said, okay, you go to Terminal 5 and you catch a flight to Lisbon. This was at Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris.
Right.
I said, I told him that I needed to go to Paris to see someone and that I don't have a plane ticket to Lisbon, that I intended to take a train from Paris to Portugal. He said no. He asked me to go back. So I left and I went back to I went to the back of the queue and came back again. So when he saw me again, he said, what are you doing here? I told you to go back. I said, why don't you let me in? This document allows me to go into Paris or any of the countries in the Schengen region, which Paris and Portugal were both part of. So I was making the argument that this document allows me to get in because I'm a resident of Portugal. So why don't you let me in? He said, no, I'm not letting you in. And before I could say anything, again, he just looked at me very sternly and said, go back now. And as we're speaking, about 12 feet away was an enforcement immigration officer. Yeah. So he could have asked him to pick me up for further investigation, and I would have ended up here back in Nigeria, or I don't know.
Yeah.
So I went back, and I went downstairs to the lower level. I went to the bathroom and washed my face, took off the shirt that I had on, and I put on a different shirt, the shirt that Antonia made me, the lucky shirt that I call my lucky shirt.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I decided to come back and follow a different immigration line and go through a different agent. And the reason I changed the shirt was also because I didn't want the guys to see me and draw attention. So I came back and I went through a different line, and the other guy was much nicer. He looked at my passport and looked at the documents. There were no discrepancies, and he looked at my face to see if the face matched the face on both documents, and they did. So he put the document back inside the passport and slid it to me and said Lasso T, which means in English, that's the exit. He pointed in that direction and said Lasso T, that's the exit. So that's how
you got through.
I got through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then where did you go after Paris?
Okay, so the story keeps getting interesting. Now, I had someone that I was supposed to meet in Germany. My best friend who assisted me, his brother-in-law lived in Germany.
Oh, okay.
And we talked every day.
Sure.
We were like a family. We talked all the time.
Yeah.
I was supposed to, the instruction was that if I got to Paris, I should call him, and he would make arrangements for how to get to Germany. So when I got I go through immigration at the airport, I was so excited. And I wanted to call him. And because I had been calling him every day, I thought that I memorized his number. But I did not memorize it accurately because I think the last digits were 91. Oh, no, 69. And I was calling 96 instead of 69. So I dialed the number the first time. Someone answered an old man voice. It sounded like an old man's voice. And he was speaking German, which I didn't understand a word of. He didn't seem to understand any English. I said, okay, maybe it was his family because he was married to a German woman. So I said maybe it was someone. And I called all my friends in Nigeria and told them that I arrived safely, that I was in Paris. I got through immigration and everything was fine. I was very happy. I was super excited to be in Europe. And after all that, I dialed the number again, and I dialed the same wrong number. The last two digits I was dialing incorrectly. So the same person picked it up. I heard the same voice again. I said, what is going on? And I knew someone in Switzerland, but he had no idea that I was leaving Nigeria. It wasn't a close friend of mine, but an acquaintance. So now I called him. He lived in Zurich. He asked me where I was. I told him I was in Paris. He thought I was kidding. I said, no, I'm serious. I'm in Paris. He said, what are you doing there? I said, I'm trying to go to Germany, but I can't reach this guy. And he said, you want to come to Zurich? I said, sure. He said, okay, go to Gare du Nord, which is the main train station. Get a ticket and buy a ticket that's coming to Zurich. Make sure you get a direct ticket, and once you confirm the ticket, tell me your arrival time, and I'll be at the Bahnhof, the train station, to pick you up. I said, okay, so I found my way out of the airport, got to Gare du Nord, bought a ticket. The direct train going to Zurich was going to arrive very late, about 10 p.m. But because I was afraid, I just wanted to buy that. So I called him. He said, no, that's too late. I can't wait. I said, okay, there's another train that's going to arrive by 6, but I'm going to have to stop in Lausanne. And I'm not sure that I want to do that. He said, my friend, go do it. You can't get lost. You can speak English. You can read and write. This is Europe. You can't get lost. So I went and changed the tickets and took the train and transferred at Lausanne, and then got to Zurich. So when I got to Zurich, I waited for him for about 2 hours because there was a concert. Interestingly, I will never forget because Ja Rule was playing in Zurich that evening when I arrived. So he was at Ja Rule concert.
Oh my
So I called him. He told me to wait, that he was at a concert. Yeah, that was October 2002. October 4th or 5th, 2000.
Yeah,
First week of
yeah.
October 2002. So, yeah, so if you
It
have.
was when you arrived in Zurich.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's when I arrived in Zurich. Yeah.
Okay. And then how long were you in Zurich?
I was in Zurich for 2 years, from October 2002 to September 2004.
Okay.
And I went back to Nigeria and applied to come here. And I think I started my application process in March of 2005, and it was finally approved in August of 2005.
And then, so did you leave Nigeria again in August of 2005?
Yeah, I got my visa the next day.
Wow,
Yeah,
really?
the next available flight. Yeah.
Okay.
Out.
So then you were out. Okay.
I was out.
And did you fly to Atlanta?
No, it was a KLM ticket.
Yep.
And of course, I was very happy to wear my lucky shirt again on the flight. So I flew from Lagos, Nigeria to Amsterdam, and from Amsterdam to Detroit, Michigan. So Michigan was my first port of entry into the United States.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then were you in Michigan for a while, or how did you come down to Georgia?
I took the flight to. I had family in Miami. So I took a flight to Miami, and then I stayed in Florida for about a month, but it was just too hot, too humid for me. So by November, about 2 months later, I ended up in Atlanta.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, do you remember the date that you came to Atlanta?
No.
Early November?
I think it was actually. I came in, I think, on the 14th of October to explore and look for job opportunities, and I went back, and then by November I came back finally. So between the 2 days, I can't remember the date in November for sure. Okay. But I think it was October 14th that I came to Atlanta for the first time.
Okay.
Yeah, and I've been here ever since.
Yeah. Okay, good. And so, yeah, that's amazing. So about November 2005.
Correct.
Is when you came, about the time that you came to Atlanta.
Yes.
Okay. So, why Atlanta?
That's a good question. Atlanta is considered a good luck city for Nigerians. I don't know if you've heard that. Yes. Because of the 1996 Olympics.
Yes.
Nigeria had the best performance ever in an Olympic, and nothing has been close to it. Yeah. Nigeria won the gold medal for football, soccer. So that's as good as it gets.
So Atlanta is a lucky city.
Yeah, and before then, Nigeria also won another gold medal in long jump, female long jump. So those are the first and the only gold medals that Nigeria had ever won at any Olympics till now.
Yeah.
So
that's a big deal.
It's a very, very big deal. And the fact, and before we got to win the Football World Cup, we beat the two best teams in the world, Brazil and Argentina, in a very dramatic fashion, especially the game against Brazil. So it's a very historic game, actually.
Yes.
And because of that, the international governing body had to make some changes because we beat them in a way that was very, very painful. They were leading, and in the final minute of the game, we equalized. We scored the game to tie it at 3-3. And FIFA, the football governing body, had just introduced a rule of sudden death. So that if you go into extra time, it's no longer 30 minutes. Whoever scores first wins. And we were lucky to have scored first, and that was the end of the game.
That's still the rule today.
No, they changed it after that. No. It was a trial. And because a country like Nigeria beat a superpower like Brazil, it left a very bad taste in a lot of people's mouths.
They didn't want that to happen again.
They don't want. No.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So
Nigeria is a good luck
Atlanta
city.
is it's a good luck city for Nigeria. That's great. Tell me a little bit about like when you first arrived to Atlanta and even how you know Atlanta today. Like, what are your favorite places? What were some of the places that you first visited, and where do you visit now? Like, what are your favorite parts of the city?
Still Mountain Park.
Yeah.
Yes. Piedmont Park. Excuse me. Little 5 Points.
Yeah.
And the underground, when it used to be here at 5 Points, I don't. It's not there anymore.
No, it's kind of fallen away.
Yeah, it was a huge, very culturally diverse market underground. Yeah, so those were places I can remember. I also went to Six Flags within the first 6 months of my arrival in Atlanta.
Which Six Flags?
Six Flags over Georgia.
Yeah.
The amusement park of I-20. I think it's Austell, Georgia.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it did roller coasters.
Yes, I did that. Yeah.
So why? Okay, so the two parks, Piedmont Park, Stone Mountain Park.
Stone Mountain Park.
And then Little 5 Points.
Little 5 Points.
So why those places?
I guess those were the major tourist attractions. I also visited the MLK Memorial Center. Yeah. All of that. I did a tour of the whole place. Yeah. So when you come into a city like Atlanta and you look up places of interest to see, these are the places that come up. So I took advantage of those.
That's great.
Yeah.
Now, what about today?
Where is my favorite place? I think of all these places, I've visited Piedmont Park more.
Yeah.
Because the Dogwood Festival that happens every spring, I go there all the time, and every time I go with my daughter, we do face paintings and all that stuff. Yeah.
That's very
so.
Sweet. Do you mind if they come in?
No, not at all.
Hello. We're just finishing up some of the interview, but come on in and take a seat.
Hi, Ashley.
So nice to meet you.
This is Obie.
This is Obie.
How are you?
We are.
I'm well. How are you?
Yeah, please take a seat, you guys.
Do you want me to go upstairs with her?
Oh,
and
that's
do that?
probably a good idea.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm
We'll
sorry.
walk up there.
I'm so excited. I've heard so much about your Yeah. Okay. Kapoor, are you gonna hang out?
Yeah, I'm
Okay,
gonna
cool.
thank
You
you.
guys are welcome to come back down here.
Yeah, thank you. You're welcome.
All right. So you still go to Piedmont Park?
Yes,
Yeah,
Dogwood Festival.
Dogwood Festival.
And there's so many things, jazz festivals, or just go to.
Yeah, that just happened, didn't it?
Yeah, walk or ride a bike around the park. And because the Beltline Trail is connected to Piedmont Park, somehow you end up at Piedmont Park if you're on the Beltline. Yeah.
Can I ask what part of the city you live in?
Right now I live in Atlanta, inside the city, about 5 miles south of downtown.
What neighborhood?
That's an interesting question. I don't know if there's a name, but it's off Cleveland Avenue.
Okay.
Yeah. It's funny because the street that I live on, Mount Zion Road, is the border of Atlanta and Hapeville. So some people who live on the street, they live on one side of the street is Hapeville. My side of the street is Atlanta.
Oh, that is funny. So you're on the border.
Yeah, I'm on the border.
Okay.
But other than that, I'm not sure of what name they have for the neighborhood.
That's all right. Do you like your neighborhood?
Yes, I do.
Good.
I do. It's
what do
close
you like
to
about it?
Because first of all, it's close to the city. I've lived. I've never lived outside the perimeter.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah, so I like to be in the city. I'm a city person. I like to be close to where things happen, where interesting things happen. Yeah, and now obviously that I'm in Georgia State, I live very close to downtown, so that I have easy access to campus. Given Atlanta traffic, you don't want to live far from here.
No, you don't.
Yeah.
How do you get to campus?
So I drive about 4 miles. I stop at the Turnerfield parking area, which is on my side of that direction of town, and I take the bus.
Yeah, the shuttle. That's easy.
Yes, very easy.
Okay, good. And how long have you been a GSU student?
I started as a part-time student in 2014 when it was Georgia Perimeter College
Yeah.
and eventually Dunwoody campus,
Mm-hmm.
and eventually it merged with Georgia State University.
Yeah.
So I don't know how, if I should say I became a GCU student in 2013 or 14 or when
They
the
merged.
merger happened. So
I understand.
yeah.
So
and,
why did you first enroll in the Perimeter College in Dunwoody?
Because I had been out of the school system for a very long time,
Mhm.
and I did not want to plunge headlong into a 4-year college
Mhm.
program. I didn't know, and again, I went to school in a different country with an entirely different curriculum and school system. So I wanted to kind of take it easy and test the waters, make sure I know what I'm doing before
Yeah.
I gradually move over to a degree program.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. So that was a good thing for you, right?
Yeah, it has worked out so far. I'm still here.
Yeah, yeah. And you're in the honors college now.
Yes.
Is that correct? Can you
Yes,
tell me a
that's
little bit
correct.
about that?
Yes. It's interesting because after I took my first, the first person that recommended that I apply for honors college was my English 101 teacher, because I wrote an essay and it was very good, and she encouraged me to make sure that I pursue a career where I could use my writing skills because she saw some potential there, and that two of my essays were, said two of them were good for submission to contest to be published in the English department annual publication. It's called Polishing Cloth.
Mm-hmm.
So she said I could only submit one, and I submitted one, and of course it was published.
Yeah.
So I made the
And this
Polishing
is,
Cloth.
and you took English, your English
101.
101, and this was downtown, or this was up
Dunwoody.
in Dunwoody? Yes.
Yeah, Dunwoody.
Okay.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So, and then she recommended that I go to apply for honors college as well, but I didn't take it seriously. And at the time, I didn't see any benefit to it. I was focused on getting a footing in the system, making sure that I'm making progress.
Yeah.
But as I continued, every time I spoke to an advisor, I went for academic counseling. They would say, "Hey, your GPA is 4.0. Why don't you should be in honors college?" And eventually, I said, "Okay, let me apply." And I ended up taking only one course. Because by the time I applied, it was actually when I was talking about graduation from the associate degree program at Dunwoody, and they said, "Why are you not in honors college? Or you should have some scholarship, because I've been paying for all my courses out of pocket."
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. It's funny. Anyway, I applied.
You just didn't know.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I'm getting some funding now.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Yes.
Yes, and I'm pinching myself. Like I was throwing money away all this while, but
Well, but you didn't know.
Yeah, I
How
didn't
could you
know.
have done anything
Yeah,
different?
yeah.
There weren't those resources.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, that's interesting. So, one of the ways that we kind of want to just wrap up the interview is, unless there's something else that you want to share, which you're welcome to. But in general, wrapping things up, I would love for you to describe what your hope is for the future. When you think about the future for yourself, please take a seat. For yourself, for your family, for your daughter, and for your hometown, for your village in your town in Nigeria. What are your aspirations? What do you hope for?
My aspiration is to be a language teacher. I speak about 7 languages, not proficiently with all of them, but I can get by with 7 languages.
Yeah. Well, you've traveled around quite a bit.
Yeah, I have. And Nigeria is a multilingual country. We have
Yes.
over 200 languages and dialects, and I picked up only 3, so shame on me. 3 out of 200. So
But please name the languages.
I speak Igbo, IGBO, my mother tongue in Nigeria. I speak Pidgin English.
Yep.
I speak. I'm still working on my regular English. I don't know how good I am. And I speak also Hausa, which is a language spoken in northern Nigeria and some other West African countries. And I lived in Zurich for 2 years. Zurich is a German city, so I learned German to get by. And just like they do in Nigeria, they have their own dialect of German called Schweizerdeutsch, Swiss German, who Germans don't understand. So I speak some of that as well, and some French.
Right.
Yeah.
Tell us the story of like how you also see your goals for the Igbo language within GSU.
Yeah, so that was I was trying to get to that.
Yeah.
Because we have discussed there's a very large Nigerian community here in Atlanta.
The lucky city.
Yeah, the lucky city, of course.
Yeah.
And of all the colleges and universities in the metro area, only UGA in Athens has a Nigerian language in the curriculum. And I think that the Nigerian community is being underserved in that aspect. We have the population, especially in the current college environment, to support any Nigerian language that comes to the curriculum. So I am also working, while I'm working on my degree here in English language, I'm also working with a university in Nigeria to get a master's degree in Igbo language, so that when we get to the point where we can put it in a curriculum, I should be in a position to teach it. So yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, where do you want to teach it?
Here at Georgia State University. that is my goal. Yes, that is my goal. Yeah, we don't have any other Nigerian language, like I said earlier. And there's a group, an African Student Association, which is very active here at GSU, and I'm part of that group. And through that group, I have also determined that there is a very large Igbo population within the group, and I have sought them out. And since the spring semester, we have started an Igbo language class, which I teach every Thursday. Yeah.
Through the African Student Union.
Yeah, through the African
I didn't know
Student
about that. I'd love to hear that.
Yeah, so I'm using that to test the interest, and the interest is there.
Yeah.
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 Very
And you're
much
honing
so.
your teaching skills for language.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have also been teaching Igbo with a group called Igbo Unite in Atlanta, which is an organization of young Igbo professionals here in the city. And the students comprise of young men and women of Igbo descent. Some were born here, some were brought here as children when they were young, much younger, and they have lost their language proficiency. And as adults, they see a need to connect with their culture, with their roots through language. So I am the principal teacher for the organization. I'm not the only one, but I'm the coordinator of the program.
Right.
Do
You're
you
running
teach
it.
some literature, Nigerian literature?
No, it's informal. We teach literature, but not in a very formal way.
I teach Nigerian literature in my English classes.
Really?
Of course, they're my
Okay.
favorite writers, probably.
Yeah.
Chimamanda.
Chimamanda, Chinua
Chinua
Achebe.
Achebe, yeah.
Oh, these are my brothers and sisters.
They are kind of a staple in my classes.
Yeah. Okay, so if you want someone to speak on a first-hand experience about some of the subject that it raised, yeah. I was discussing with her the earlier part of the interview. Some of the scenery that you see in Chinua Achebe and Chimamanda, I lived them. Yeah. And it's funny because as popular as Things Fall Apart has been, I never got to read it until 2016.
When you were here.
Yeah. Because I was dating a girl who challenged me to read it. But I never, and her father is a history professor. So, but really, I think that novels like that, they tell my story. So there's nothing for me to look for in there that I don't know. It's refreshing and fascinating to get their perspective and see how they they tell the story so beautifully. But I wasn't reading it to look for anything that I did not already know or hadn't experienced directly or through the stories that I had heard from my parents and grandparents. Yeah.
I like Chimamanda's modern work because it helps students understand that Africa is a very cosmopolitan place.
Yeah.
So if you're going to go to Lagos, it's going to be a big, wild city. It's not like you're going to what the Americans think of as Africa.
Yeah.
You know? So I always like to pull that into the class, you know, even just for that basic, and besides the fact that her writing is so amazing.
Okay.
So
Do you teach here on this campus?
I teach at the Perimeter campus in Clarkston.
Clarkston.
So we
I
have
see.
lots of Nigerian students out in Clarkston,
Okay.
and lots of students from the African continent. So, in ways that teaching those sorts of materials are much more comfortable and accessible to my students than maybe Hemingway.
Yes.
I try to, and besides, they're my favorite anyway. I get to pick what I want.
I read Hemingway in Nigeria.
There you go. They made you. It's a British. It was a.
Yeah. I took Hemingway. I took Charles Dickens, and of course Shakespeare.
Yeah.
You've been to a lot of schools, though. Also,
I've been to a lot of.
Yeah, I love reading. Yeah, I love to learn.
Yes.
Yes.
So what department are you in here?
English.
You are.
He's
Yes.
in the honors college.
Oh, you are.
Yes.
Nice. Very nice.
In fact, I was talking with Dr. West a little bit, right?
Okay.
Who's your teacher for your honors course right now, and she was saying how you and she were talking about like which track would be best suited for you,
Right.
especially with your goals for the Language Institute here, you know. And she was actually advising that you think a little bit more about
Rhetorics.
comp.
Yeah.
That's my area.
Oh yeah.
That's very
I'm happy to
yeah.
mentor you.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
It's also
instead
it can be about teaching. I know you said you wanted to teach language, but also teaching writing. So teaching language and writing. Kapoor will tell you because she had me as an English instructor. It's not just about, it's about fluency, you know.
Okay.
So whether it's speaking or reading or writing, it's just about communication in whatever, you know, language or technology or whatever method you're choosing. And Rec Comp as a major has some more breathing room. It's not as, you know, kind of focused as lit studies. So.
Okay.
And there's some great teachers in that department. That's where I did my PhD.
Oh, wow.
In the Rec Comp department here.
Okay. Do you know Dr. Cassell? Kara?
No.
Okay.
No.
She also did a PhD here, and she teaches at Dunwoody campus. She was my English 101
What's her last name?
composition. Cassell. Kara Cassell.
She must be pretty new.
Yeah, that was
That's-
2014.
And that's the class that you won the department prize
Right.
for your essay.
Did you go to Perimeter before you came down
Yeah,
here?
yeah, of course.
Oh.
Yeah, I went to Dunwoody, and I took some
Oh,
classes.
Perimeter students.
Yeah.
That's where the best students come from.
I actually
I keep
took
telling them.
I took classes in classes. Some of my classes
Did
I took
you?
in classes.
And then
yeah.
the kids were down here for the
You
honors
skipped
college.
me. I don't think I was teaching. I think I already had my job down here, so oh well.
I see.
So, Obie, so you spoke to your aspirations to establish the Language Institute here in GSU, right?
Correct.
And how the community is being underserved right now because there isn't that language outlet, right? Tell me about your hopes for, like, back home. Tell me about your hopes for your village and your town in Nigeria. Tell me about your hopes for your daughter who is in Germany.
That's my hope for my daughter. That's very, very easy to speak to because I'm a parent.
Yeah.
And that's actually why I challenged myself to go to college. I didn't have to. I was well established in my business. But I thought that one day this girl would be going to college. Her mom is a dental hygienist. And what if she calls on me for direction or advice on anything regarding her career?
Yeah.
I mean, what would my excuse be for telling her that I don't know because I have not gone to school? So yeah, I challenged myself to go to school because I want to be there for her, you know, if she needs me. And at the same time, I like reading and learning things, and I thought that I should get some credit for
Right. All these books you're reading.
for all the books I'm reading and all the information I'm packing in my head. So, yeah, that is my personal goal. and for my daughter. As far as my village in Nigeria, I am not in a position to sponsor anybody now, but I am also working with some other people from my village who are here in the United States in different parts to establish a scholarship program to send kids to college on our dime.
Yeah. College here at GSU or
no,
just
in Nigeria.
Okay.
It's much more expensive to pay for someone else's college here out of pocket. So, yeah. So it's in Nigeria. Yes.
Yeah. Would you be open to that though? Like, would you want to eventually make pathways?
Yes, of course. Another thing that I'm working on is adopting. I have thousands and thousands of nieces and nephews, as you can imagine. so the what I have as an immediate plan, not just a goal, but a plan to adopt about four of them and bring them here to go to college. Yeah. And I have not really explored the pathway to bring someone from Nigeria to go to college here. I know that it costs a lot of money. I don't know how that works out. I haven't explored it. But if it's something, that is something I'd be willing to work on if there's the provision for that. Yes.
Yeah. Good. Well, I think that we hit most of these major points. Was there anything else that I may have skipped over, like a story or something that you had thought that maybe you wanted to share, or did we get through a lot of those stories?
I think you covered everything. I can't think of anything else that's on my mind that I haven't shared.
Well, thank you so much, Obie. Your story is fascinating and beautiful.
Yeah, it's been my pleasure. That's your card?
Yeah,
yes.
Let's hang out, okay?
Yes.
Mary Helen's a really good resource for
I have an office in Dahlberg on the 3rd floor.
Okay.
If you need anything, especially if you want to talk about English in classes or whatever. The department
I need a lot.
The department chair is my mentor. So Dr. Gaye is my very close friend and mentor. And then I work in the international office. And so I think it's funny that we haven't met until now, but we were just writing a grant to start a heritage language program for Lictals, which are the lesser commonly taught languages. And those were some of the languages that we talked about. So if we get this federal grant, I've been pushing for them because I've been saying we have this amazing community. Arabic is a Lictal, Karen is a Lictal. Those are all languages that the government is interested in putting money in to develop language programs around. And I didn't know that UGA was the only one that had any sort of Igbo or any kind of.
Yeah, UGA has Yoruba.
They have that too?
Yeah, that's the only one they have. They don't have Igbo at all.
Who in Athens takes it?
My hands were in the air when I heard that.
Signed up for that class.
Yeah. And I also, when I was making inquiries, I have some of my friends, actually one of my students in Igbo class is an English teacher at Clark Atlanta.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so she found out that Spellman is in process, is working, trying to bring Yoruba too.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, the other person, one of my colleagues in OII is from Nigeria. Kike is in charge of the international partnerships and agreements. And if you're looking to partner with universities in Nigeria, we may have some already existing partnerships. Georgia State actually has existing partnerships all over the world, and sometimes it's just not a known kind of thing. But however I can help you, man.
Okay,
just let me know.
I was because when I was filling up the documentation for formality, I just chose creative writing. But when I sat down with Dr. West and we discussed about what my goals were, she recommended rhetorics for me. So but I haven't spoken to anybody. So
okay, let's do
I'm going to.
I'm around.
Okay.
I'm going on vacation the week of 4th of July, and that's it. So I'll be around the rest of the summer.
Okay, so I'm going to email you, and then we'll start from there.
Yes, sounds good.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Obie. I'm going to stop the recording now.
Okay.
Oh, I thought you already had.